In the stillness of the early morning, when the world is quiet and the sun has not yet touched the earth, a Buddhist monk rises from his thin mat. He doesn't rush, he doesn't hesitate. He simply gets up with the same quiet certainty he's practiced for years. His name is Tenzin, and this is a story of how he found inner peace, not through grand enlightenment, but through the simplest truths hidden in plain sight. Years ago, Tenzin was not a monk. He lived in the city, caught in the noise of traffic, deadlines, relationships, and a constant pressure to be something more. He worked a corporate job. He answered emails late into the night. He smiled when he didn't mean it. He laughed at jokes that didn't feel funny. Like many of us, he was always doing, but rarely being. And somewhere in the middle of all that doing, he lost his sense of peace. One night, after a particularly stressful day, Tenzin found himself sitting on a park bench long after the sun had gone down. He didn't plan to be there, he just walked aimlessly until his feet stopped moving. And as he sat there, watching strangers pass and feeling the weight of everything he'd been carrying, a strange thought crossed his mind. What if I just stopped? Not stopped living, not stopped breathing, just stopped chasing the promotions, the approval, the never-ending list of achievements he thought would finally make him feel whole. He wondered what would happen if he simply allowed himself to exist without the pressure to be anything more. It was a small thought, but it was the beginning of everything. A few weeks later, he visited a monastery, not with the intent to become a monk, but just to find a moment of silence. He stayed for a weekend retreat. He expected peace to come from the chanting or the rituals or maybe the ancient wisdom the monks shared. But what struck him most was something far simpler. There was a monk there, elderly, soft-spoken, and seemingly invisible to everyone else. He didn't lead the meditations, he didn't give lectures. He swept the leaves off the stone paths every morning, slowly, carefully, as if each movement was sacred. As if the entire world was contained in the dance between the broom and the earth. Tenzin watched him for hours, not because sweeping was interesting, but because there was something in the old monk's face, an ease, a calmness, a joy so deep it was almost silent. And for the first time in a long time, Tenzin felt stillness inside himself. No words, no thinking, just presence. He asked the old monk one day, "How do you look so peaceful?" The monk smiled and said, "I don't look peaceful, I'm peaceful. But not because life is easy. I found peace when I stopped asking for the world to be different." That answer sat in Tenzin's mind like a riddle. At first it didn't make sense. How can we not want the world to be different? There's suffering, there's injustice, there's heartbreak. Are we supposed to just accept it? But the monk's eyes said something else, something softer. He wasn't talking about giving up or ignoring pain. He was talking about surrender. Not to the world's cruelty, but to its reality, to stop fighting what and begin living with it, not against it. Inner peace, Tenzin learned, is not about controlling the world around us. It's about changing our relationship with it. The world will always move, thoughts will come and go, people will love and leave, the seasons will change. But underneath all of that, there is a space inside us that remains still if we choose to return to it. He stayed at the monastery for a week, then a month, then a year. Eventually he became a monk, not because he wanted a title, but because he realized he was no longer the person who once sat on that park bench, lost and tired. He had shed the weight of needing to be anything other than who he was. And still, life was not perfect. He got sick sometimes, he made mistakes. He even felt sadness. But peace was not the absence of these things. Peace was the quiet acceptance that they too were part of the whole, a single drop of ink in a wide, still lake. Tenzin shared a simple practice, one he gives to those who come seeking what he once sought. It's not complicated. It doesn't require sitting for hours or reciting mantras. It's called, when your mind races, pause. When someone says something unkind, pause. When the world feels too loud, too fast, too heavy, pause. In that pause, don't run, don't resist. Just breathe. Feel the breath move in and out of your body. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel the moment as it is, not as you want it to be, but exactly as it is. That pause is your doorway back to yourself. Tenzin once said, "Peace is not a destination, it's the space between your thoughts, the silence between your words, the stillness beneath your emotions. It's always there. We've just forgotten how to see it." He compared it to the sky. Our thoughts, worries, fears, they are the clouds, sometimes thick and dark, sometimes light and scattered. But the sky is always there, untouched. Peace is the sky. Everything else is passing weather. One morning, many years later, a young man came to the monastery. He looked tired, not in his body, but in his soul. He asked Tenzin how to find peace. Tenzin didn't give him a lecture. He handed him a broom. The young man looked confused. Tenzin just smiled and said, "Sweep, but don't rush. Don't try to finish. Just be with every movement, you'll understand." It wasn't about the broom, it was never about the broom. It was about presence, awareness, slowing down enough to see that everything we need is already here, that peace is not hidden in mountaintops or temples, it's in your breath. In the space between heartbeats, in the quiet moments you usually rush through. So if you're listening to this right now, wondering how to find peace, remember Tenzin. Not because he was extraordinary, but because he realized something deeply ordinary, that we already have what we're looking for. We just need to stop long enough to see it. You don't need to change your life overnight. You don't need to move to a monastery or give up everything you own. You just need to begin with this breath, this moment. Let it be enough. And if your mind tells you it's not enough, that you need to be more, do more, prove more, pause. Smile gently at that voice. And remember, the sky is still there, the peace is still there. And so are you, always.